Joining me now is Chief Public Defender in Cook County, Illinois, Sharone Mitchell Jr. Sharone, thank you for taking the time this morning and hopping on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So again, you're joining me from here in Chicago. Illinois became the first state in the nation to eliminate cash bail. So if anybody knows about bail reform and what judges are considering, it's you. What do you make of Trump's criticisms against cashless bail?
Yeah, Trump is wrong. He's actually aggressively wrong. He actually couldn't be more wrong. In the 2 years since Illinois stopped using money as a factor in determining whether somebody will go to jail before their trial, we've seen both murder rates and violent crime rates fall. In fact, in Chicago, we've seen about a 33% drop in murders since the same time last year. Nationally, commentators haven't seen these type of stats since the 1960s. Let me be clear, like one gun death is one gun death too many. I know, as you mentioned, I live on the south side of the city, but in the end, that the idea that ending cash bail has increased crime is a completely preposterous position.
And tell me this, though. I know you're not in New York, which is the case we've all been talking about for a couple days now, but riddle me this, how a 7-time offender is let back onto the streets over and over again and is then able to shoot an off-duty agent this week. How does that happen?
Well, judges don't have crystal balls, and there is a presumption of innocence, right? If we move to a system in which people were found guilty just because they were accused, we'd have thousands and thousands of people in jail and in prison who didn't do it. In a civil society, we have a presumption of innocence. We have an entire process that requires that there be evidence presented before a person is found guilty.
But you don't find it to be, or a judge, I should say, doesn't find it to be a red flag after, incident number 6, that, hey, maybe this person doesn't need to be let off the hook?
Well, I think let me push back on the idea that somebody's let off the hook. When somebody's accused of offense, then that means that there needs to be a process for determining whether an individual actually did the offense. The fact that there are multiple offenses actually suggests to the fact, and I don't know about this specific case, so I can't speak to the specifics, that the charges didn't. I'm not sure stick the first couple of times. So again, this idea that a person is guilty 6 times and this is the 7th typically doesn't happen. I think the other thing to note as well is that we have this idea that because a person is released before the trial, that means the outcomes are not to come. There still has to be a trial. There still has to be an opportunity for both sides to present their case and make the determination. And when you look at the numbers, the vast majority of people who are accused of offenses come back to court and are not rearrested. We can look at 1 or 2 instances and say, oh, that's the case. But in essence, if you look at the tens of thousands of situations, people mainly both here in Cook County and across the country come back to court and aren't rearrested. We can't use individual outliers to make the decisions for millions and millions of cases.
And according to the Brennan Center, to your point, a recent study discredits the claim that bail reform causes higher crime. But what's the solution here to keeping repeat offenders off the streets, you think? What more does need to be done?
Well, I would maybe challenge the proposition that this is some type of problem that is spilling out of control. I think that when we look at 1 or 2 instances and we use that to extrapolate in the tens of thousands of cases, we could come to a conclusion that it's not the truth. The reality of the situation is that criminal legal systems all across the country look at tens of thousands of cases every day, and they don't have crystal balls. While there's individuals who may be accused of offense or released and rearrested, there are also just as many, if not more, actually probably more, individuals who are accused of offenses, and the evidence later finds that they weren't guilty, that a judge or jury finds them not guilty, or a prosecutor releases them before a case even comes because the evidence didn't support the claim. So this idea that we should just throw out the idea that there is a presumption of innocence would create massive havoc and put massive amount of people, innocent people, in jail and prison before any evidence has been presented.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.